first thing we kind of wanted to get into was maybe your humanitarian. I'm Libby.
I'm Jude.
I'm Shruti.
And I'm Julia. And today we're interviewing Cailyn Stewart, who's one of our good friends and one of the co-presidents of UChEW. Cailyn, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi there. Like Julia said, my name is Cailyn. I'm a senior studying chemical engineering at UT Austin. I'm also doing certificates in humanitarian engineering and public policy. And I'm a senior. I'm from the Austin area. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome, Cailyn. It's so great to have you on today.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much. And I'm really excited for just everything this podcast has brought together and the work y'all are putting in for that. It's phenomenal. And this podcast is amazing. So I'm really excited to be a part of it.
Thank you. Well, I think the first thing we kind of wanted to get into was maybe your humanitarian engineering efforts and why you decided to, is it a minor or a certificate?
It's a certificate program, yeah.
Okay. Why you decided to do that and kind of what it entails?
Yeah, I'm really passionate about that and the certificate and sharing that with people. I really didn't feel like I fit in with Chemi. Like I didn't see myself going the traditional route with the jobs and stuff like that. And I came into college wanting to just be able to find a way that I could use my talents to serve others and help others. And so when I first learned about humanitarian engineering, that really stuck out to me. And I was just like, this is it. That's what I want to do. And I've had so many opportunities at UT because of it. There was a study abroad course I took in Paris where I met one of my absolute favorite professors and mentor, Dr. Janet Elsie, who's in the mechanical engineering department. And she's kind of been the person that has spearheaded all the humanitarian engineering opportunities at UT, from founding projects for underserved communities and now the humanitarian product development program, and even more. She's still putting in work to try to expand on that for her students, which I really appreciate and I look up to her for. But yeah, the study abroad course was amazing, and not only being in Paris, but in Geneva. We went to Geneva. I got to learn about, a lot of refugee stories, a lot of ways that just the background on humanitarian work and how that works, the history of the UN, the IFRC, all of that. And I really found my dream job. I would love to be a sanitation engineer for the Red Cross. That would be my end goal in life, but we'll see if I end up over there. And then after that, I got to work on a prototyping design course called Humanitarian Product Development, where I worked with a team to further the efficiency of a solar heater that would heat a biodigester, which is basically a large rubber bag that will process waste in communities with low access to infrastructure for sanitation. So in really crowded refugee camps, places where disaster has just hit, with a natural disaster, and everybody has to go live somewhere else because their homes have been destroyed and they're all in one place. Sanitation is one of the biggest things that is number one in those situations, just for the sake of public health and everybody's health and safety with that. And so that was really cool to work on that device. Our device was basically, you take plastic tubing, you coil it up, and you put it on a wooden frame, and you throw flow of water through it, and then you leave it out during the sun, when the sun is out, and then it heats it up. So we were working on optimizing that, which was very challenging and a good learning experience. But I loved working with that team. Shout out to Sumu, Jonathan, and Akash. That was really awesome. But yeah, and now I've finished the certificate. I can kind of go over what is involved with that and how I fit it to my degree, which was actually kind of easy. There was a few things that were already in my degree plan that I could count. They had the requirement of the physics sequence. There's really 6 parts to the certificate. The physics was one of them. There's an intro course that I already had credit for. I claimed my geography credit from high school. And then there's the project component, which was that humanitarian product design course that I did. And then there's a seminar involved that's taught by Dr. Elsie, which is really cool. It's kind of a really good space for everybody to come in with their projects, whether it's projects for underserved communities or HPD, and come in and share about their work. And then lastly, an engineering elective, and then an upper division liberal arts class, which for that class, I took Population and Society with Dr. Shannon Kavanaugh from the Liberal Arts College. And that class was really awesome. I loved it. If you're listening and you're looking for a class like that, I highly recommend. And I also got to double count that for my public policy certificate. And so I was just looking for the ways where I could make it out with the least amount of classes because I really didn't have much room. But yeah, that's kind of everything about humanitarian engineering at UT.
That's really cool. I have a follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
So how did you get like on that team that you worked on for like the prototyping course that you did? Was there like an application process, or since you were already in the humanitarian like certificate, was it just like you kind of joined that team? Like how did that work?
Yeah, so there was an application process. They only take about 20 engineering students, and then they leave 5 spots open for other students. But I took it in its inaugural year. And so I applied spring of 2019 and then found out of my acceptance and then joined in the fall through the spring of 2020. Yeah.
Did you have any prior knowledge or anything like going into the course? Because it feels like I would have no idea where to start with such a big project like that. How did you go about getting up to speed?
I learned that joining in on any project, whether you're starting from scratch or you're taking it from off of somebody else's hands through the next stages, it really takes a lot of time to get acclimated to a project. And this project was the continuation of 2 semesters of mechanical engineering senior design. And so we had to go through their reports to kind of get all the background knowledge. But for me, I was really lucky because I took that study abroad course with Dr. Janet Elsie. We actually met the guy who invented this flex adjuster biodigester waste bag. And so I got to learn straight from him, like how it works and the science of everything. And so we actually worked closely with him too. He lives in the UK, and so we had to Zoom or Skype at a time that worked for him. Yeah, he was very helpful on the project, and we were able to go ask questions to him. And it still took a long time to get acclimated, but it was really nice that, you know, I got to have that experience of meeting him and learning about the project, and then I got placed on that team. I think that was all on purpose. Yeah, it definitely took a while. I really felt like, and throughout the whole thing, like we had to fundraise with the Hornraiser crowdfunding campaign, which took a lot of time. And so through that period, we couldn't really devote as much time to the actual prototype device. And right before the pandemic hit, we really were about to get somewhere with like developing a testing method and finding out some data that we could use to optimize the whole system. But then the pandemic hit. So we just focused on documenting everything for the next team to pick up and kick off with. And so it's continuing every year with the same projects, but new teams, which is a very interesting model.
I have a question. How did you decide to do the product development versus like projects in underserved communities? Or was it an option? Did they tell you which class you were taking? How did that kind of go?
Yeah, this is actually a really funny story and kind of shows some of my pitfalls. But I was actually, I really wanted to get into humanitarian engineering. When I learned about PUC, I was like, that sounds like a really cool program and experience, and I want to join that. I decided not to apply for it for my sophomore year. And I was like, I'm going to do it next year. I need to make sure I apply for it junior year and everything. And so the application season comes around, and I know it's there, but then I guess I had a thermodynamics exam, I think. And I had to study for that the night it was due, and I just missed it. And I emailed the person in charge of the application. I was like, hey, can I submit? And she was like, no, you can't. And so I was really beat up about that for like a week. And and then one Saturday morning I wake up and there's a Canvas notification from, I don't know if it was from WEP or if it was from like the chemical engineering department, but Dr. Elsie had basically sent this out for people to share on the Canvas pages, and it was for applying for the humanitarian product design course program. And so I was like, well, this is my sign. Like I missed PUC, I messed that up. Like there's no going back. You need to apply for HPD. And so I did, and then there I was.
I had a question, but I lost it.
Oh no.
Talk like a little bit about, is there a reason why you wanted to get into like humanitarian engineering? Is it something you always wanted to do, or was it just coming to UT and like seeing there were opportunities, or did you kind of come in knowing this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I didn't really know much about it before I came to UT. I just learned more about it, and it just became something I'm super passionate about. I think it's really awesome that, you know, we have access to so much funding and research at big universities like this. And I think that with that, we could be using some of those resources to, you know, fund research on devices that might help lower income communities, or disaster areas and disaster relief. And so I think that's something that we should value a little bit more and like put money behind in terms of research and stuff like that.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Another question I had was, what is the mix of majors that you find in humanitarian engineering, like within engineering itself? And then you said there are some spots for other majors as well. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the other majors first, because in projects for underserved communities, those 5 spots are actually reserved for social work students, because they do go abroad and build basically an infrastructure project in another community. And so just having like the cultural competencies and everything, and just the way that all of that works, working with NGOs and all of that for those programs, they have a social work student on their team, which is very beneficial. For my course in HPD, I feel like we had a good mix. Like I think I was the only chemical engineer, but my project was super applicable to all the pipe flow and the heat transfer and everything we've been learning. But yeah, we had mechanical engineers, civil and environmental were another common one. There was a team with mainly electrical engineers. I think they had a mix, but electrical engineers are really important too. And we could have benefited from one for like designing our automatic testing system or something like that. There's also biomedical engineers. That's another major you find there. It's really everybody. I don't know if I feel like eventually we may start to see a divide between the two programs. Like you have all majors in PUC as well. But that work is more mainly geared towards civil engineers. Everybody can have a contribution, but you know, all the infrastructure stuff is mainly civil engineering. So I think eventually it will kind of like shift between like you have your mechies and your double E's and stuff in the product design course, and then you'll have your civil engineers in the PUC.
Interesting. I have another, oh, go ahead, Shruti. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna kind of ask you about your public policy certificate and how you see that tying into your humanitarian engineering career.
Yeah, I think that they can be really related. What I've actually had the opportunity to study within public policy has mainly been like the internships I've done, and it's related to like healthcare and public health. And the public health is really related to the humanitarian engineering in a way. But there's definitely a lot I would like to explore in terms of like global development and policy behind that and funding, because it's all quite complicated and it's a lot about the money too. And I've been meaning to email a professor who came and visited my public policy seminar this semester. She has an experiential learning lab in the LBJ School of Public Affairs focused on global development. And so I want to know more about that and like what opportunities are for students there, but I still have to send that email.
Another question I had was, I don't know if you're going to know this, but what can you do with like humanitarian engineering and like this public policy interest that you have like after you graduate? Like what are things that you can do to really, because I know you said the sanitation engineer and the Red Cross, but are there other things? Because I feel like it's not like I can't think of anything off the top of my head that you could really apply that to.
That's something that as a senior I've been racking my brain about. Like so I'm at step A, and my dream job or whatever being a sanitation engineer is step Z, these other steps in between. Like what is your starter job for that and everything? And I haven't been able to figure that out. There are some websites like Idealist and things where you can find more service focused opportunities. But I'm still working through that. I know that mainly okay, I'll take a step back and tell you a little bit about the people I met at the International Federation of the Red Cross, because we met William Carter, who is a UT graduate, who I don't think he did PUC. I don't think it was around in his time, but he studied civil engineering, graduated and joined the Peace Corps, and then worked at various NGOs until he's where he is now. Other people who were there, the person who worked in public health was from Canada, so I don't know kind of what was her path because they don't have the Peace Corps, but they probably have more direct like pipeline into, or however you want to put it, into NGOs and stuff like that. And then the same there was another lady we met who worked in the like shelter sector of the IFRC, and she also wasn't an American. I think she was from Italy. And so their career paths look very different than I feel like for an American. To my knowledge, I feel like the only way to get into that type of work is through the Peace Corps. I know that is a good option, but I'm still exploring other ways. So yeah, and like there's so many things you can do with like it's hands-on, like learning, engineering, building experience, leadership experience. And so you can really apply that anywhere, whether you go work your normal job in an oil company, or you can go into sustainability, into environmental engineering. There's really a lot I feel like you can do for that, but it's not directly related every time.
Yeah, definitely. I know that was kind of a tough question. Like,
yeah, well, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing with my life.
Who isn't trying to figure that out, to be honest? But
my clock is ticking.
I have one more question about, do you have any advice for anybody that wants to look into the humanitarian engineering or public policy, kind of what you did for your application or things you did think that benefited you? Or
yeah, I think it helps to talk to people in those programs. Like I really didn't talk to anybody in public policy before joining it. I was just like, I'm gonna join this certificate because I have most credits for it already. Figure out what you're passionate about and try not to waste your time on things that aren't exactly that. If you have a few internships to apply for and one of them is not something you could see yourself doing, then maybe don't go for that, because there's other opportunities there if there's other opportunities available. But yeah, like with public policy, I had my classes and then I had to do internships for that and like for credit. And so that's another place where you can, like, if you plan ahead and you take the time, you can find something you're really passionate about and something that's like really beneficial to you. And so don't waste your time on the small ones that are unpaid or whatever like that, because you deserve resources and getting paid and everything.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of pressure, especially being a chemie, to get like a normal internship with like an oil company or chemicals company or something. How have you like dealt with that pressure, not really taking the traditional path of like doing like an oil and gas internship or at one of these big companies? Because I know I personally feel like there was a lot of pressure, and some of it's sort of like once after you do the internship, you're like, I could have spent my summer doing something that I was a lot more passionate about. Like, it's still helpful to have that experience, but I don't know, it wasn't really something that I was super passionate about. So could I have done something better with my time? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important studying engineering that we get that, fundamental like work experience in engineering. that's something I do kind of regret, is that I never really went hard for any of those expo internships and stuff like that. And part of it I feel like was I didn't really understand how it all worked, which I know is crazy because we have so many resources to help us with expo. But I really didn't understand like the whole like networking process and all of that. And I feel like a part of it is imposter syndrome and thinking like, oh, I won't be qualified for any of that stuff. What else? And like I was too caught up with school, to be honest, was the other thing. Like struggling with my classes was enough, and then figuring out how to network and stuff on top of that. I really like would have been more gung-ho about it had I like actually been interested in any of those jobs, I feel like. And so I just like I applied to a couple things here and there, but I really didn't put in much effort for that. But yeah, I went on and did other things with my summers. Like after my freshman year, I took physics and I worked at a jewelry company to make some money. In my sophomore year, I studied abroad, and then I got the opportunity to go TA a summer camp biomedical engineering class, which was a very interesting, very fun experience, but very interesting and exhausting as well. And then this past summer was the pandemic summer. So I was just at home doing my little unpaid policy internship and taking some classes. So not the traditional chemi route, but I've still had like full summers, busy summers, and a lot of outside academic credit, which has been helpful with all the certificates that I've done.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's important to like tell people that not everyone has an internship at Exxon every summer. Like,
Don't,
and that's okay. Yeah.
Like you will graduate, you will get a job, you will be okay, and we don't need. Yeah, that's that on that.
I don't have any more questions about the humanitarian engineering. If anybody else does.
No, I was just about to say we can kind of maybe switch to talking about orange jackets or like
Yeah.
some
Would you
extracurricular.
like a good description of like what humanitarian engineering is?
Oh, that's probably helpful.
Yeah. Okay. So it just the way I usually sum it up real quick. I just didn't want people to hear me talking about this stuff and not know. But it's basically applying science and engineering principles to provide solutions to communities in need, whether it's like disaster relief or refugees or low income communities. And that's basically it. Sorry to interrupt on that.
No, I can't believe we kind of skirted over that.
I really should have started with that. I should have known. Like it's my passion, but I'm not going to tell you what it is.
You have to Google it. Sorry.
Yeah. There's the thing.
So maybe we could talk about your extracurriculars and kind of something I'm curious about is like, what's the distinction between like service versus like humanitarian work versus volunteering? Are those the same? Because I feel like I use them interchangeably, which is definitely incorrect. So if you have any insight on that.
Yeah, that's a big question. I think the humanitarian engineering is kind of separate. It's very small, but I feel like it's like a developing sector. Because there's a lot of like small tech that's working on some of those devices and solutions and stuff. And like you're still an engineer and everything, but service and volunteering. I feel like volunteering is more just about the time. Well, this is a hard question. I like it, but it's a hard question. I'll just start with service. I feel like volunteering is easier, but my brain is like the gears are not going right now. Service, I feel like, is this thing that we characterize in this very like glorified way. And you have to, I don't know what I'm saying. I feel like service is a lot broader than what we actually think it is. Like it's what you do with your time. It's what how you care for your community. That is still service. If you're taking care of your parents or your little brother, like that is service. It's not always just going to the food bank and sorting cans for 2 hours on your Saturday, even though like time is still needed, time is still valued for that from people, but there's just so many ways to serve, I feel like. And that's kind of the distinction between service and volunteering. I think that volunteering is, I mean, you're putting yourself out there, whether it's, but I feel like it's just a verb, if you know what I mean. Like, you know, you volunteer to stack all the chairs in the classroom after class, or you volunteer to build a shed that, you know, a community center needs to house all their supplies. Like those are very different things, but it's still volunteering. I don't, that may not make much sense on that distinction. I feel like the lines are kind of blurred between volunteering and service for sure.
Thank you. No, I get what you're saying, definitely. And you would classify like orange jackets as service, you said?
No, with
Or
OJ,
volunteering?
I mean, there's a mix. Like we do volunteering, like we have volunteer opportunities. I mean, we do call them service opportunities. So maybe you're right. The words can at times be synonymous. Because like in the past, we've had opportunities for like the Micah 6 food pantry in West Campus, Inside Books Project, which is one I really like. What else? Oh, and our biggest one is we work with the settlement home for children, or the Texas Settlement Home for Children, which is a place where mainly girls go when they aren't thriving in the typical home setting, whether they're in foster care or not, I think. And with that, before the pandemic, we would go and every other Friday and just do an activity with them, just for like some social interaction and some fun, whether it was like a craft or some sort of self-care thing. One really cool thing we did, we made these paper lanterns for Halloween. And so we had like brown paper bags and we cut holes and like had all kinds of craft materials to put on them. So I think I have mine still somewhere around here, but I drew like a little moon and a star, but that's irrelevant. But yeah, so we would do volunteering with them every other Friday, which was honestly like a lot of fun. Because we would just get to go and hang out, like we couldn't take our cell phones and everything. So it was just very in the moment for that. And now we've had to shift how that all works with the pandemic. And so now we have a pen pal program, which has been really fun because I've never had a pen pal before, but and this was like, none of this is like required in Orange Jackets. Like it's all like as you want to do it, as you want to participate. And so whoever wanted to participate got matched with a pen pal, and then we write letters back and forth. And it's honestly been so much fun just write about things, you know, just whatever. But yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about what Orange Jackets is for people who are unfamiliar with it?
Yeah, so we are an honorary service organization at UT. We were founded way back in 1923. So we're very old. We've changed a lot, which I think is one of the most important things about having an organization that old. And just being aware of the history of it and like how we're changing for the better and like ways we've could have harmed the UT community or whoever in the past, and like how we're trying to shift to be more inclusive. And so yeah, there's a lot on that. But yeah. We're an honorary service organization at UT. I don't know much. I mean, you can see us, we've done things at the football games. We volunteer, we do hostings for UT events where they need like a student presence. And we do a lot of service. And then for our what is it called? Our tenants, that's the word I couldn't think of. I was thinking pillars. Our tenants are service, leadership, scholarship, and community. And community, that's one of our new changes is we've added community. And I feel like the way I think about it is like you can't have service, leadership, and scholarship without community. So it's kind of like the roots to the whole tree. And I just think it's really beautiful that we've added that. And like we are really emphasizing that now, especially with the pandemic and everything, and you know, caring for ourselves and our community and everything.
Can you mention how you got involved, how that process worked? Did you do it? Were you a freshman or a sophomore or?
Yeah, for OJs, you apply in your sophomore or junior year typically. There's like, yeah, that's basically the way it is. You have to have had 2 semesters at the university, so that means you're a sophomore, or you have to have 3 semesters left. So you could apply in your senior year if you were planning to stay an extra semester, or a 5th year, anything like that. And we only do recruitment in the fall, but we have a special application in the spring, called our Margaret C. Berry Scholarship, where we select one sophomore and they get membership into the following fall's TAP class along with the small scholarship. So yeah, for background, I applied 3 times, all my 3 opportunities for applying to OJs in my sophomore year, in the fall, and then in the spring for the Margaret C. Berry Scholarship, and then in the fall again. So my junior year was when I got tapped in, is what we call it.
Nice.
Our new members are taps.
It seems like you've done a lot of different like service projects with them. Is there one service project or like service thing in general that you think has like impacted you the most or stuck with you the most? I guess it doesn't have to be with OJs, but just anything.
Yeah. I mean, with OJs, I really miss getting to go to the settlement home actually. And I think that's what I not only enjoyed doing the most, but I felt like was a really valuable use of my time too. And I remember in the spring I think we only had 2 settlement home visits before the pandemic happened, and I went to both of those, and I'm really glad I did. And I only got to go because it was full, but they needed a driver, so I had my car, so I got to drive some of my friends. But outside of this, I feel like there's a lot outside of OJs because a lot of what we do is, I mean, we're big into scholarship and service, but a lot of like everybody has their own different passions. So they're all doing work in different spaces. And so just supporting that and uplifting that, I think, is a very special part of this community. But for me, like, I feel like for my service, like working on the prototyping project was really important to me. And there's other volunteering I've done like outside of OJs before in my first 2 years. I don't know if y'all know about the project. Okay, Shruti nodded.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of vaguely know that it's kind of like UT, like a campus-wide service event.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about that because I did that in my sophomore year and it was really awesome. It's basically like UT's largest day of service. It's adjacent, like if you have friends at A&M and you've seen them do the big event, it's basically the same thing. And I've noticed that there's a lot of like similar like things like that at different universities. Like we have Texas Thon. Pretty much every big university does a dance marathon for a children's hospital, and at A&M, sorry to keep referencing them, they have like Ivy Miracle. So there's a lot like of similar opportunities you can find at other universities. So like if you're listening to the podcast and you're not at UT, you can find similar things. But yeah, so the project is UT's largest day of service, and it's a big day that lots of volunteers come together to serve in one of the local Austin communities, but there's a lot more to it than just that day. So they forge a relationship with a particular community in Austin and work with them on that day over a few years. So when I volunteered, it was their 7th year in Runberg, which is like an area in kind of northeast Austin. And the way like the whole structure kind of works is they have different sites. So they have this community center, this elementary school, this high school, this church, and like a lot of different sites. And in those sites, they have a lot of different projects. And so there's different positions you can take within the project. Like you can just be a day of volunteer where you show up, there's the supplies for you, you just get told what to do and you go do that. And then there's other roles you can take. So I was a team lead, and that was kind of the next level of the kind of structure. And so team leads, we did some training. We had like cultural competency training where we learned about the history of East Austin, which is really important to know about the gentrification and the 1928 city plan. So it really gives context to the service that we're doing, and trying to undo, the harm of the history of it all. And and so we had those trainings. And then the day of, we kind of oversee a couple of the projects. And so I got to oversee a sidewalk painting doors, and then painting a scooter track on a at a pre-K. It was like a painted concrete. They had to repaint the lines. And then above that was like the committee members. And so we were one site at this pre-K. And so the committee member kind of oversaw I think the whole site and all the projects we had. And then above that was like their whole core team that runs the thing throughout the whole year, which is a lot of logistics, a lot of fundraising, a lot of planning, a lot of recruiting volunteers for the day of. So it's really, really a huge structure at UT. And there's a lot of ways to get involved, which I really appreciate, like the different levels of commitment you can have, and like what amount of time you can devote if you want to be involved in something like that. And even just volunteering the day of, I feel like is a lot of fun, and it's like all well organized, and you have all the resources you need. And these, I haven't really said like what kind of projects they are, but it's just like the things I said with the scooter track, or repainting the doors to these portables for this pre-K, a lot of gardening, and like just small beautification or improvement projects like that across the community in Austin.
Can we maybe switch topics to UChEW unless anyone else has questions about like service and volunteering? So I was wondering, so you've been in UChEW, I guess now you're one of the co-presidents in your senior year, and you've been in UChEW for the past 3 years. So what do you love about UChEW, and like what has kept you here? Why did you want to take on a leadership role? Because you've had leadership roles for the past 3 years, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, so I was publicity chair my sophomore year, and then vice president internal my junior year, and then now I'm co-president with Isabella. Honestly, there's really a lot I do love about UChEW. It's kind of just been like a very good community and kind of a safe space for me within chemical engineering, where I can talk about we can all talk about some of the things we're struggling with within this department, which I think is really important to be able to talk about that stuff. And so just having that and seeing it my freshman year, so that was back in 2017, and UChEW was founded in 2016. So it was still very new. And I really got involved through Aditi Rajgopal, who was my my wet pal. And so we met a couple times and like hung out, got coffee and stuff. And through that, like she was, when the officer applications opened up, I was like only 5% considering to apply. And she was like, you should apply for officer. And I think they didn't have a lot of people applying, so they really needed people to apply because it was still a really small organization. And Isabella and I both applied, and we were both on the team our sophomore year. And just with that, we saw like how new of an organization it was, and like where this could go, and like building community and stuff like that. And so we're just like, we're gonna commit ourselves, we're gonna build up UChEW, and it's going to be awesome. And so that's where we are. That's why we decided to run for co-presidents together, because just we kind of see things on the same page, and we're very supportive of each other. And so it's been really nice to have her along through all of this. But yeah, I love like working with the officer team. I love getting to meet and getting to know the new members, and just all the fun things that we get to do with like just I guess we've built some traditions now with like having polka dots cupcakes at our last meeting in the spring, and the Galentine social and all of those things, and going to Mozart's, which I don't think I've done with UChEW. I know they've done it every year, but I haven't been available for it. But yeah, just all the fun things, and just being able to support each other, complain when we need to, and all of that.
Yeah, that's really awesome. One thing I did want to mention, you said WEP PALS, and for anyone who doesn't know, WEP is Women in Engineering Program, and PALS is Peer Assistant Leader. So every freshman woman engineering student is assigned a PAL when you come in. So just to like clarify that acronym.
I don't have any more questions. I don't know if anybody else does, but Cailyn, I just wanted to say a thank you. This was probably one of my favorite podcasts so far, just kind of listening to your experiences. Really? So thank you so much.
Rambling too much.
No, I think it was great. if anybody has any questions for Cailyn or anyone else on our team, you can email us at texasuchew@gmail.com. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for having me, and I hope you all have a great day.